Hey, what's going on, family? Welcome back to another weekly thought. Today's thought, or I should say this week's thought, is going to be on culture. So I had a very good friend give me a call this past week and asked me about culture and they're trying to change something where they work and they're kind of struggling with that. And so we had a really good conversation and she actually came up with something really good that she learned from somewhere else, but I love it and I'll talk about that in a minute. But let's think about culture real quick because right now there's so much going on with diversity, equity, and inclusion, and so many organizations are trying to change uh, their optics, their scopes, how they hire, how they promote, how they communicate in general. And a lot of this revolves around a culture, right? And one thing I've found dealing with clients, applying for positions, working with different groups, right, is that culture is something that the top of an organization loves to say, this is what our culture is. That's not always what it really is. So, real quick, and this might be a little bit longer than most of these weekly thoughts, but I think it's an important topic and I would love to hear people's thoughts on it. Culture, right? Think about biology. You take bacteria, you put it in a petri dish, you have a culture, and the bacteria will grow and you can observe it, right? So you're looking at it through a microscope and you're seeing what that culture tells you about that bacteria, right? Much like a business. The difference is what do they do in those labs to see exactly the reactions and how things work with the bacteria. They introduce new items, right? So when someone says, I want to see a cultural change, they want to introduce something new, which creates tension within that organism, right? Organization, right? That tension can turn into a whole lot of things dysfunction, numbers, performance, efficiencies, everything can go down. You might even lose some people because they don't want to adjust. They're part of the old bacteria, they don't want to be part of the new, improved, or just different bacteria. So, a lot of times, you won't see real cultural shifts unless one, it starts at the top, right? And two, it is the new way. And therefore, people either fall in line, and it's always best if people fall in line because they want to, not because they're forced to, right? Because who wants to be in that culture, you know? But at the same time, they always say you got to lead by love or by fear, right? And I think that's kind of not the case because a lot of people will say someone's threatening me only because they don't want to do necessarily what they have to do in their role. So, anyway, let's go back to this whole thing, right? So, culture shifts are very important because it's also keeping up with times, right? So, what is going on at your organization, right? On a cultural basis. And if somebody asked the top what culture is, would that mirror what someone at the bottom says? So I've always done a thing where when I'm talking with a client, when I'm consulting or whatever, and someone says this is what our culture is, I didn't want to get out and talk to the frontline people. I want to talk to the people at the bottom because they're going to tell me what they feel it is. And then the culture is probably somewhere in between, right? And I usually, if I get the standard, like the I drank the Kool-Aid, and so I believe the culture is exactly what everyone else says it is, then I'll ask a follow-up question, which is, well, what sucks? What do you hate about the organization? And then I take that component and I say, okay, here's what they say the culture is, but they say this sucks. I asked five people, they all said the same thing sucks. So here is the gap in the culture, right? There's a lot of different ways to do it, and I by no means am a pro on this, but I've been around the block a few times, and I've been at the bottom and I've been at the top, so I've seen both sides of that coin. Now, what my friend told me, and I love this, is old keys won't open new doors. Let me say that again. Old keys won't open new doors. How true, and how many different ways can you apply that sentence, right? If you're not willing to let go of the past, how can you ever be open and accepting of the future? You know, So it's kind of like if you have a glass of water and you want some juice, but your glass of water is full and you only have one glass. So your option is drink the water, dump the water out so that you can now fill up with juice. We have to be very open and candid with one another when we're talking about cultural shifts, and especially if you're at an agency where the diversity, equity, and inclusion hasn't been a conversation, and now you're trying to make it a conversation, right? That's not going to happen just because you wrote something down, just because you said you want to start focusing on it. It has to be a regular topic, right? It's kind of like riding a bike. You might finally learn how to ride a bike without training wheels, but if you do it once and then never do it again, you're going to fall down probably the next time you get on the bike. So this has to be repetition to achieve the best results. So anyway, this week's topic, culture, and my throw out to everyone out there is, what do you think the culture is at your agency? Ask some people, and ask some people what they would like it to be, and then ask yourself, is this culture right for me? Is this reflective of who I am, regardless of work, right? And I know it's hard to say you'll just leave somewhere if things don't mesh, but we all need to be happy. Once again, this is Tito. I love you guys. I appreciate each and every one of you. Please stay safe in these times, and please thank the people to your right, to your left, above, and most importantly below you, because they may not have heard it in a while.